Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of SYD Life. It's me, Charlotte, here to introduce part 2 of our relationships mini-series where we're talking to someone who's single, someone who's dating, someone who's married, and I'm about to hand over to an incredible panel of women. Bec is going to be hosting the podcast and she's incredible, and then we're also going to be joined by 2 amazing other ladies. So I hope you enjoy and have enjoyed this entire series. Next year we're excited to do it even more, dive even deeper. But yes, enjoy, let us know what you think, and if you have any other topics you want us to discuss, just let me know. Enjoy.
Yeah, well, welcome back, everyone. This is my first time on the podcast, and I'm hosting first go, so straight into the driver's seat. But yeah, we're just really excited to continue this conversation around relationships, covering it from the angle of single, dating, and married, and just, sharing our perspectives of how we've lived life, and hopefully give you some tips on how you... So for this episode, my name is Bec. I am representing the single ladies out there. And we have...
I'm Ellie. Am I representing engaged or dating?
Dating.
Okay. Oh, I'm representing dating.
Hello, I'm Jordan and I'm representing married people. Girls.
And yes, unfortunately, we only have 2 working microphones today. I keep saying this morning. It's not this morning. It's literally 4 p.m. But yes, bear with us as we pass the mic between us. But let's get into it, shall we, ladies? So first question, which is kind of similar to the boys, but I want to hear our perspective and I'll share mine as well. But what pressures can we feel to be in a relationship and to settle down and just kind of keep, I don't know, putting labels on things? I'm going to phrase it like that. What do you guys think?
Okay. I feel like my experience has been unique because I'm a part of a church community, but I'm also very involved in my university community, and I've been very involved in my Spalding community. And I'm 31, and I feel like at the moment, outside of church communities, it's very normal to be in your 30s and to be single. So I feel like I haven't felt that much pressure. Maybe it would be different if I was only involved in a church community, but I feel like in general, our culture though can tend to view the singleness, dating, married thing as a classic 3-course Western meal. I'm very into my food analogies lately, so bear with me. But for example, we often see singleness as the pre-course entree, just something that no one's excited for. We just want to get it out of the way to get to the good stuff. And a main meal would be analogous to dating, the good stuff, what we've been waiting for, and then the sweet thing that we need to top it off and be okay in ourselves is marriage. And something that someone told me when I was single that was super helpful to me was these seasons of life are a little bit more like a traditional Chinese banquet. And if you don't know what that is, they bring out multiple courses, but they're all the same size. They're all just as pleasurable, all intricate, detailed. And that was just so good for me to think of singleness at the time as I'm not less than, this season is not less than, it's actually so good, but it's it's different good. So that was something that was super, super helpful to me.
Yeah, I'd say I agree totally with that. And I know for me, I'm 27 and I've never been in a relationship, never had that label of girlfriend or whatever. But for me, each of my siblings got married at 21 or 22, and my mum was married and having her first kid when she was my age. And growing up, they were always kind of I guess the landmarks, the what's the word? The stakes in the timeline, whatever. Those kind of markers of oh, when I'm 21, maybe I'll meet someone and that's when I'll settle down. And then it was oh, maybe I'll have my first kid by the time I'm 27, just like my mom, and all that kind of stuff. But what I've found is that when I put the pressure on the time frame and like maybe I'll have this by this or this by this, whether it's relationships or anything, I'm often let down. And so I'm like, okay. So something that I've had to kind of journey with that is like to stop putting the pressure on as much as the world's trying to put the pressure on, to just be like, no, it'll happen when it happens. The classic cliche that doesn't help when someone else says that to you, but when you're telling yourself that, that's like when it's going to have the impact. But yeah, just kind of letting go of that time frame. And like you said, like just enjoying the season of life you're in. Like I've lived a very different life to my siblings. I've lived out of home, lived with friends. I like moved cities, all these like wonderful experiences that they haven't had because they've just lived a different life. And yeah, I just think there's seasons for everything. But what do you think, George, like in terms of, I know because you and Jackson dated and got settled down like kind of young, but then did you even still feel that pressure even within that?
Not really, which is probably not
Nice.
helpful. Yeah, but that's the thing. I feel like there's always something that you'll go through that will be your season of waiting or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But even just thinking like, so context for us, we started dating when we were 17, 18, dated for 5 years, got married when I was 23. So I don't feel like I really ever went through a stage of worrying that that wouldn't happen for me. But then, and so then when I look at, I obviously have friends, I'm now 34 and I have friends who are still looking for their life partner, who really want to get married. And I think like the biggest pressure they're feeling is this fear of missing out because of they're comparing to their best friends and the life stage of people around them. And I look at it and go, and like for me, for us, that was more like, oh, everyone around, like all my best friends and I got married in our 20s. So we kind of had that, but then they all started having kids and we're only about to have our first kids.
Yeah.
So for us, that was like our thing.
Yeah.
But obviously we're not talking about that. But just to say is I think that's like the big pressure, is the fear of missing out, because you think like, I want to do life at the same time as my friends and the same stage that they're going into. But I've honestly found that even being in a slightly different life stage, like being married but not having kids yet, but with all our best friends being in that stage, like nothing has changed in our friendship. Like I think if you're intentional, you don't have to miss out on anything.
Yeah.
And I think exactly what you guys said, having that joy of the season you're in and what God's teaching you right now, like as long as you remain intentional in those friendships, you don't have to feel like you're being left behind, which I think is something that like is a fear.
Yeah.
Can come up.
That's so, can I add?
Yeah.
That's so good, George. And like, isn't it funny that whatever season you're in, like people will always, like there's just no avoiding this. People will always ask you what's next.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about like people, like you having these like milestones that your siblings reach and you hadn't at that time, I am so of the opinion that like you just have to own where you're at.
Oh,
like my
totally.
dear grandmother who loves me and genuinely wants the best for me, but when I was single in my late 20s, just every time I would visit her, like, is there a man? Like, and it was always like, I don't know if you get this, but it was always are you okay? Like, are you okay? And I would just be like, Nan, like, I love being single. And you do just have to own it. And like, timelines, like throw them out like 100%. And like, you might find, Bec, like something that might encourage you is like when I was like, something I'm really proud of myself is for how I did my singleness, like especially in my late 20s. I just made the most of it 100%. And I remember traveling and doing all these things. And one of my best friends actually called me one day and she said, Elle, like she was like married and she has kids and she loves her family. But she said, I just got to let you know, like, I see all these things you're doing on social media. And she said, I actually feel like jealous. She said, it's not that I don't love my husband or my kids, but I just realized like, oh man, I don't get to have all those like traveling experiences. And like, so exactly what you were saying and what you were saying, like there is such a sweetness to every season. And like, you don't, like the danger with disappointment is like disappointment will make you fixate on the things that you don't have. And then you actually miss the beauty and mystery of what's right in front of you. So, yeah.
Yeah, completely. I actually had someone say a similar thing to me like just a few weeks ago of like, I got married young and I think you're the perfect age now. Like, it's just like, I've obviously loved my life and like has kids and all that, but it's just like, yeah, we had to go through a lot by doing it earlier and you don't have to do that. And I was like, Heck yeah. Yes, moving on to the next question. And I think we can all share, but I want to hear both of you, of just how do you balance being independent in your own life, being single, and then bringing that into a marriage, but then also being independent within relationship and doing things with your significant other?
I might answer this from a singleness perspective because I remember this when I was single, but I'd be interested to hear your perspective of maintaining a level of independence when you're married as well. Like one of the principles that I live my life by is like content but wanting more. And like I remember when I was single, actually, and even now, I don't know if you guys find, but you often tend to hear people like talk about singleness in extremes. Like it's either like, I hate being single, I'm absolutely done, I just need somebody. Or you hear like the people who are they've been so disappointed by dating or like even by rejection that you kind of hear them resolve themselves to like, you know what, even though I want this, like I've got to be prepared that I might be single like the rest of my life. And it's almost like there's this expectation that you either have to like hate singleness and want to be in a relationship or like be so content with singleness and not be in a relationship.
Yeah.
But like they're not mutually exclusive. I think it's totally possible to be so content in your singleness and to enjoy it and be loving life and at the same time being open to a relationship, wanting a relationship. So yeah, I would really encourage people like you have as much chance of being content right now in whatever circumstance you're in, dating, engaged, married, as you do in any circumstance. So like if you can learn to be content right now, you can learn to be content with anything. So, and I'm so glad that I learned to be content when I was single because I think it would have, if I wasn't, it would have set me up big time for disappointment when I was dating, I think. Because as wonderful as it is, it just does not fix your own contentment in life.
So good. And on the independence, so you were saying, wait, can you rephrase the question?
I'll rephrase it. So it says, how do you balance being independent whilst in a relationship or looking for a relationship?
Yeah, it's good. I think, and definitely I remember when we were dating, because we dated for quite a long time, that there's this thing, and you can share if you agree, Elle, but when you're dating, it's like you want to spend all your time together. And I remember, especially for us in our early days of dating, it was like, you can kind of forget about your friendships and kind of leave the other things aside because, you know, the relationship becomes all consuming and then there's this unhealthy level of codependence.
Yeah.
And I just think now I'm like, looking back, I'd go, you know, prioritize your girlfriends. Like as in for me, like now every Friday morning I meet up with like 3 of my best girlfriends and we just have coffee, and then like my closest friend group, we have dinner once a month and things like this where it's like the boys can, you know, do their own thing. It's not even like the partner's invited, it's just the girls. And even like doing things with your work friends or, you know, having a book club or plug. I think just, it actually just, whether you're dating or married, it leaves room for you to miss each other. And you know, you come from being married, you come home and you're like, you know, how was your night with the girls? It's like, it was so fun, but like now I'm home with you and that's so fun too. Like, I think, yeah, it's just, I can just see how healthy it is. And also I think just having your own interests and hobbies is so important. So I think like, you know, Jackson loves surfing, and so I'll be like, go. And also I know how good it is for him to go surfing. I'm like, just go do that. You'll come home and then, you know, we'll do whatever we want, you know, go out to a cafe, do our own thing. But I think having that time apart, I'll read, like sometimes we're sitting in the same room of the house, not talking, doing our own thing. But like that's a slight level of independence as well. It's like I'm over here reading a book, you're watching a movie, or you're, I don't know, editing something or whatever it is. But we don't have to be doing everything together all the time. But it just allows us to have our own, I don't know, love for things and identity.
Yeah, I would say I see that similarly reflected in my life, even just living with housemates. And I mean, I've been blessed to live with some of like my best friends, and so your best friends. You want to hang out with them all the time, and to just like, learn that balance, like you're saying, of just like being in the same room but not necessarily doing the same thing. Or like if they go away for a weekend, I'm left by myself. I'm like, oh, whoops, I need to make some other plans. Majorly extroverted, so that's a struggle. But no, I mean, it's all kind of just backing up the same idea of just like whatever situation you're in,
Totally.
you got to still just be doing your own thing, being your own person, not relying or putting all your, like, not putting people on a pedestal just because they're the person you're in a relationship with and that sort of thing. So I'm going to change streams a little bit here. I don't necessarily have any experience in this, as I said, not being in a relationship ever, but, and I also don't know if you guys have, but that's okay. But the question is, how do you handle it when people have opinions about your relationship? Like, and we're going to speak about like negative opinions about your relationship, which again, I don't know if you've experienced that, but what would you kind of speak into that?
You start.
It's good. It's really good. I mean, my first thought is like, you have to decide who your circle of trust is and who you're allowing to speak into your relationship.
Yeah.
Because I think you can get anyone, like people just have opinions all the time. And so you just choose, okay, if you're outside of that circle of trust, it doesn't need to affect me. You can just reject it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a time and a place for like people you've allowed to speak in to your life to say things that they can sometimes see that you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we're talking specifically about negative opinions. Maybe I'm erring on the like a constructive opinion.
Yeah.
But I think in the dating phase, obviously, and I also think it's different when you're married. When you're married, you've made that covenant. There's no going back. Keep your opinions away. That's fine.
Yeah.
But especially when you're dating, I think sometimes you can allow your best friends to speak into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's negative, you use your own judgment and gut instinct to reject what you need. I think it's tricky.
Yeah.
I haven't had a situation where I've had really negative opinions and had to like deal with it on that front. I don't know if you've had anything.
Swap the mic over.
I feel like I don't have much to add. I think you nailed it in terms of like, you don't want to be talking to every person about your relationship. No way. But like, it depends who's like closest to you. For example, my family members and my closest girls, for sure, I was letting them speak into my relationship with my fiance when we first started dating, and I absolutely gave them permission to be honest with me. I mean, nothing they ever had to say was any deal breakers, but I absolutely welcomed any like things that they were like, oh, okay. Like, because my my fiance is Brazilian, and he'd only lived in Australia for like I think a year when we started dating. So I think everyone was a little bit like, oh yeah, he's really nice, but like do you know anyone that's known him for like longer than a year? Like he could be a serial killer. Like but no, I went to his hometown and they all loved him and all good. But
Brilliant.
It's hard, right? Like when you love someone or when you have a crush on someone, you get so. It's easy to be very protective over it, right? And it's like, I kind of don't want to ask anyone what they think because I really like him, and like I can't say no to it. You know what I mean? But it's good. It's good. It's never like, oh, you have to break up with them. But I absolutely like welcome your people to like be honest with you 100%, and like maybe it can bring something up that you can talk about with your person.
Yeah.
That's kind of vague, but I feel like you nailed it. Like, let your closest people speak into it.
Yeah. What about then, this is changing again, but similar. It's all about communication. I mean, you hear it everywhere in life, in your workplace, in friendships, whatever, that communication is key, and it is. And I would say for me, like I said, moving out of home, moving in with friends, like that taught me so much about just the fact that I grew up different to other people in the home, and you have different ways of doing things, different opinions, but also that like when things are an issue, you need to address it. So how would you say would be healthy ways? Wait, what's the question? Let me get this right for the people listening. How do you set up healthy communication in the early stages of a relationship, or even further down the line once things are established and you need to kind of reroute it?
I have a question though, because this comes quite naturally for me. Is this something people actually struggle with?
Yeah. Really? Oh, yeah. Yeah, people that avoid conflict.
Oh, okay,
people
conflict
that
avoidance.
just like
Yeah.
hate speaking their mind because they feel like they're going to offend someone.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm so lucky because the Brazilian culture is like, you just tell me anything. Like,
Nice.
and so I've never felt, like, because I'm an honest person, but I even like my upbringing, I've never felt so safe before to like voice what I honestly think about things.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And like, I really think that's such a green flag when you find that in a person. And like, my personality I actually can naturally, I'm a little bit higher in neuroticism. So sometimes my thoughts and emotions can be a little bit irrational. And I'm always aware of that. But with Kennedy, I always feel safe to say like, hey, I know this might be a little bit irrational, but like, you okay if I just express to you what I'm feeling right now? And he doesn't always have to agree with it, but he never judges me and always gives me such a safe place to voice that. But even like having self-awareness, like you might want to bring something up, but even just prefacing with like, hey, I know I'm actually really scared to tell you this, or like, I know this might sound a little bit irrational. I'm okay with being wrong. Are you okay if I just voice it?
Yeah.
Don't know if that helps, but
No,
yeah,
definitely.
just some self-awareness helps. And people always like, people can, I think the boys, if you haven't listened to the boys podcast last week, it was so good. Have a listen. But I think they might have been talking about how like, maybe it was Curdy talking about how people have such a high capacity for truth than we give them, and honesty than we give them credit for. But yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really good. Actually, so beautiful hearing about your relationship. I think definitely it took us a while to figure out healthy communication. I mean, again, we started dating so young, started dating at a very like formative times in our lives. And so I feel like we actually dated for 3 years, broke up for a year, dated again for 2 years. And that was like when we got back together where this is the intention to get engaged and get married. And I honestly think that was the part where we started actually doing things healthily. And I think it's a lot of us bringing our upbringing in before that. Like for me, I'm a Enneagram 9, so I need to keep the peace. I want the harmony. I don't want to say anything that's going to disrupt the flow or disrupt the harmony of the situation. So I will often bottle things up. I don't want to, even if I feel completely safe with Jackson, but I'm not one to be like, I just need to say this right now, or I want to bring this up because I'm like, things are really good. Like, let's just keep cruising. And then like, maybe if things take a little dip, I'll add it in there. Because it's already, going downhill. So yeah, I think that for a while, I probably just didn't speak up. And then when we realized, okay, we need to develop some healthy communication. Definitely what you were saying about just listening to each other without judgment. That like really rings true of like, I feel like sometimes we can talk to each other and immediately assume what we think the other person's trying to say, or just form a judgment without actually listening, but just creating a safe space of like, whatever you have to tell me right now, it doesn't have to reflect like you, it doesn't it can just be, that's how I'm feeling today. And so yeah, having a space for active listening where you're actually listening. And then the openness and honesty like you were saying as well, just I've had to grow in being able to be open and honest because I will just happily keep it to myself. And then that's when you see a breakdown in communication because you are bottling it all up. And then, so I think we're still learning, even 10 years married and 5 years dating before that. But I think it's because of the way we're wired. Like even you saying, do people struggle with this? I'm like, I actually think it's who we, like I just grew up in a family that was just way more like, we don't express ourselves in that way. We keep it to ourselves. So I don't think it was modeled to me.
No, same.
And then, I think Jackson and I have to work out together how it works for us.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So my question for you on that is like, is the reason you would bottle it up because would you be scared that if you actually were honest, he would like think less of you? Or is it more that you're like, oh, I just can't deal with like any tension. I just want to, I would rather have like discomfort in me and it like externally be like peaceful.
Exactly. I'm very conflict avoidant, and I think that you kind of nailed it. Is like I'll deal with the discomfort rather than our relationship going. And the thing is, like when you actually do speak up, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. And Jackson's amazing. Like we have great conversation, but I will just in my head, and it's the same with friendships or whoever. Like you just think this is going to cause a rift. This is going to disrupt the harmony. Whatever it is, it's just in your head, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I literally even just saw this like a meme post a little while ago of, I don't know if it was like a girl talking to a guy or whatever, but it was basically saying, like when you don't answer my text messages, like I panic and I think that you like hate me and I think I've done something wrong, blah, 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 blah. And then the person replied was like, oh, that's not a very nice image of me that you have in your head. And I was like, whoa. Oh, because totally. And it just comes from your insecurities of like, oh my gosh, if I say this thing, like, oh my gosh, what did I do? What did I do? Did I get that wrong? Blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, because we always have to get everything right in life. We don't. But yeah, that's painting a picture of the person receiving it like that, and that they're not having grace for you, and they're not like allowing you space to be freaking out, like whatever it may be. But yeah, I just like read that and was like, oh, totally.
And like to give, I guess to give you an example on the communication thing, I remember when me and Kennedy, I think it took me about 6 months to tell him that I loved him, because he told me, I think he told me like 3 months in.
Yeah.
But I told him, hey, when I tell you, I'm just letting you know, like, I'm an I love you person. So once it comes out, it's just never going to stop. And anyway, once I finally fell in love with him and I started telling him, I was telling him all the time, and sometimes he wouldn't say it back. And I was like, babe, like, I just like, sometimes when I tell you that, this is really selfish, like you shouldn't say it to get it back. But I was like, sometimes when I tell you I love you, like, it doesn't feel very good, like, when you don't say it back. And he's like, Ellie, do you know, like, he didn't grow up in a family that, like, ever, I think, precious man, I hope he's okay with me sharing this, but, like, just culturally, I think he heard it maybe once from one of his parents.
Right.
And he's like, I just needed you to know that the fact that I tell you regularly, like, I've never said that, like, to anybody in my life. And then it suddenly made me feel so bad, because I was like, oh, he's already stretching himself so much to like say that to me and be vulnerable with me. So yeah, a classic example of me making up a story, and a stupid story in my head, but like we were just on different planets, you know? So yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to hear more from you, Elle, just about I mean, you said before you're 31 when you started dating, or you're 31 now.
31 now. It's been reasonably quick for us. I think we got engaged like a little bit after the 1 year mark. Been all together like 14 months maybe.
So like 30.
Oh yeah. I was 30. Sorry. Yeah.
I'd just love to hear, I mean, we've talked about this in our own lives, but just hear from you about like being single in your 20s and through all the pressure of everyone telling you that you shouldn't be, or just asking when it was going to end, and you're like, I don't know. But then how did you find that transition to being in a relationship? I mean, you just kind of said it took you a while for I love you, but then what about all the other things?
This might have been to do a little bit with like expectations. I'm, you know, no shame. I'm a very girly girl. I've grown up reading Bronte, you know, Pride and Prejudice.
Right.
All those things, watching all the chick flicks. And of course I had very, very high standards. And like, when Kennedy first asked me out, I was actually interested in somebody else. Yeah, surprise. And I was so disappointed that this didn't work out with this other person, that like, in the beginning, I was missing the fact that there was this fun, surprising Brazilian creature in front of me who was like so into me, like pursuing me. He was such an amazing man, but I just missed it at the beginning because I was so fixated again on what I wasn't getting. And also Kennedy was such a surprise in my life that like it just all started so differently to what
Yeah.
I expected.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, and it is like real life. We always say this, me and Kennedy, but like real life love is it's beautiful, but it's so different to fictional love. I mean, you have moments of that, but like, honestly, whenever in the beginning, and we had big conversations about that, once I let go of like some of my unrealistic expectations, I was like able to enjoy like the beauty and surprise and mystery of what was actually in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have to remind myself to do that. Yeah, so in terms of transitioning, honestly, I didn't think that was such a big deal. It was more like initially, as I mentioned, me just dealing with some of my expectations. And mind you, like standards are good. Like anything that's like really important to you, it's so good to speak up about that. And that's actually a very attractive quality when someone can actually stand up for something that's important to them. That's like a different thing. But yeah, when it's unrealistic, sets you up for disappointment, which then, can make you miss out on what's right in front of you. But yeah, I think, as I mentioned, because I had been so content in my singleness. And at the same time, I knew that I wanted a family and I knew that was okay as well. So, it wasn't I don't think it was a big transition for me. Is that like a question that's on your mind of like how you transition from singleness to like holding space for someone, or?
A little bit. I would say more so in the practical side of things, just because like I feel like I'm doing pretty well at balancing the like contentment but also desiring it. But yeah, because I've never actually been in a relationship, there's a big part of me that's like, what will I even be like in a relationship? I don't know. But I just kind of keep coming back to, well, I'll probably be similar to how I am with my friends.
Yeah, you'll be so wonderful. It exposes everything, doesn't it, though? Like,
yeah, great.
But it's like, and I was always scared of that too.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, like someone's going to find out actually like what a crap person I am. But no, like,
Yeah.
the capacity comes for it. You don't get the capacity for something until it's in your life. So once it's in your life, you will have the capacity for it.
Totally.
And like, yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. But also, be prepared. Every little thing that you feel insecure about right now, or like you don't want someone to see, unfortunately, they're going to see it. But you know what's beautiful about that is like someone gets to see the worst parts of you, and when it's the right person, they choose you anyway.
Yeah.
And that's kind of beautiful. I didn't expect that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's throw to George for another question. I know a lot of people want to hear about marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about it being this pinnacle that we all envision. But what would you say are some challenges that you've faced, or even friends that are married did I say it? Challenges that have come up that you feel like people don't really talk about that much?
Yep, it's good. I feel like this one, because I feel like it took Jackson and I so long to realise this challenge, literally even we'll still say it to each other like regularly, is obviously you're both going to go through things, and I think when you're both not in a great place, so like, you know, one of you stressed with work and one of you is not having great mental health day or something like that, those are the moments when we will just argue for no reason, or we'll, you know, you have a conversation about nothing and one of you is upset and you're like, why? Why am I upset? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But we just suddenly look at each other and we're like, oh, we're both actually just not doing that great right now and we need extra grace. And I think it's something like we just didn't realize for a long time. And like it seems very obvious, but when we realize it, it actually just completely dissipates whatever it was that was going on. But if you don't realize it, you end up like bickering about nothing, or like it just is something that we just literally look at each other. And I even asked like Jackson what he would think a challenge was, and he said the exact same thing that I had thought about, which was this. And I think it's because it's been really big for us, where it's like if one of us is going through something, the other person just steps up and goes, cool, I can be robust in this season, I'll just care for you, and we're good. And like, you know, say it's me and I'm just struggling with anxiety and I'm not doing well, so I'm not being my usual bubbly whatever self. If Jackson's doing good, he's like, cool, I can hold space for that, you know, that's all good. But if he's also really stressed at work and really frustrated with something, and then I'm over here with this, that's when it like the worst comes out of the both of us. So just realizing, we just look at each other and we're like, hey, we're actually both not doing that great right now. Let's just hold like extra grace for each other, and it honestly does change the situation.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the biggest ones.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I could think of others, but that's a big one.
Yeah, no, I haven't noticed that this week in my house, because I've been like, I've had a lot on my mind with work things, and then my friend and housemate has been struggling with some like health things, and so like I was noticing that like we weren't bickering, but there were just like a couple of things that were missed in communication, and we haven't even talked about it. I don't even know if she noticed it, but I was just like, why are we both reacting like this? Like, I know our cycles, and I know we're both not menstruating. And so I was like, what is it? And I was like, I'm just stressed with work. She's stressed with her health. Yeah. And so in the house, I'm not dealing with work in the house, whereas she's still feeling sick. Like, I can be the one that shifts gears and like just snaps out of it. So yeah, that even happened in my life. Well, as we kind of wrap up, I would love to hear your one thing that you'd love people to take away. It could be something that's already said, or just something you came into this recording wanting to yap about. So yap away. You want to think?
That's right. I'll go first. It's what I said before. So where's the camera? And
there's three of them. Pick one.
Okay, guys. I'm going to pick you. And like I would say, I touched on this before, but I would say I'm talking to single people when I say this. I'm talking to people dating, married, and I'm talking to divorced people. Like, you have as much of a chance right now of being content and happy than you will when you get the thing that you want. So like learn to be content now, and you'll be able to be content at any time in your life.
No, I love that. Love it so much. George, do you have anything you want to add, or do you want me to go first? Have a little minute.
You go first.
Okay. I'll speak. So for me, as I said, 27, I've never actually been in a relationship, which that in and of itself can kind of, I guess, has its own like stigma around it. Like, I don't know. I've seen online people being like, oh, I've never been in a long-term relationship. That's such a red flag. And I'm like, oh, yikes, am I a red flag? But for me, it actually has like come from a dream, not an actual dream, but a dream for my life that I literally have had since I was like 11 years old, which growing up in my church and in my family and stuff, we had guest speakers come to our church, and it was a man and a wife, and they were young. And I remember her talking about their story, and she was just saying like, he was my first kiss. He was my like first proper boyfriend, blah, blah, and like my husband. And literally just little me at 11 was like, oh my gosh, I want that. And so for me, I can like look back on my life and be like, oh, I'm 27, wasn't married like my siblings young, like not even like my parents, not like people around me, like all that sort of stuff. But then I literally am like, no, God's protected me from what I didn't want. Like, I wanted my first relationship to be my husband. And you can view that with like the pressure that can bring. And I've I've honestly gone through like waves of that, of like, okay, I need to like take the pressure off it. Like, you can just like go on dates with people. And I have, like, I've gone on dates with different guys, and it just hasn't eventuated to anything more than that. But I just, have to keep coming back to the fact of like, no, that was a dream that I had as a little girl, and God heard that, and he still hears it, and has still been protecting me from different things. And like, you'll also often hear, sorry, this is the second thing, but you also hear like people saying like, oh, don't get into a relationship until you've like dealt with these big things in your life. Like, don't carry that baggage into a relationship. And I think there's so much to be said for that as well. Like, obviously, if you have the chance to be working on yourself while you're single, while you're in a relationship, like, you should. But I think for a while I was kind of using that as well as like, God must still need to be like working on things before I get in a relationship. And yeah, I don't know. It just all comes back to that, like being content in where you are and understanding that God's going to grow things in you no matter what season you're in. If you're a Christian, I mean, if you're not a Christian, I hope you're still improving yourself. But yeah, it just kind of always comes back to there's always going to be something. And if you're not being intentional about being content, then you're going to be struggling no matter what.
And also, like, being content is attractive.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I'll sit on that. Yeah, I completely agree.
it is.
Totally.
Yeah. Sorry, do you have your thing now, Joyce?
I'm gonna, yep. I mean, honestly, I think the common thread is the being content in any season. But I was just thinking from the married perspective, like, marriage isn't meant to complete you.
Yeah.
It's not the end goal in this life.
So good, yeah.
And I think, like, even like I spoke kind of at the beginning, even when you're married, there are still things you're waiting for or desiring or wanting as well. You just do that together as a married couple. But it's learning to be, I think something so important is to be present in every season and just learning to find the joy of, like you said, what God is teaching you in this season. And also that there is so much joy and gratefulness for whatever season you're in. And that's where contentness comes from, being able to go, I have joy even now in the waiting, whatever it is. So, yeah.
That's your one thing. No, it's
That's
beautiful.
probably my one thing.
Yeah. Any last thoughts
I
before
have
we
one
wrap up?
last
Oh,
thought.
yeah.
One quick,
Great.
really random thing
Mhm.
is when you get married, choose someone that you just genuinely really like as a person. That
Yeah.
like just that you're like, I just really like you as a human, because I think, and even we didn't really touch on like red flags, things like that, but I just think of speaking well of each other and things
Yeah.
like that, and all these things are actually easy when you just like, it's not even just love. Like, love is a decision a lot of the time, but like I really like you. It like comes out in the way you speak about each other. It comes out in the way you act towards each other. And I just think when you get to that stage and you find someone, get married to your best friend who you just really like and want to do life with.
Oh, that's really sweet. Yeah, no, I love it, and I've loved this series. I loved hearing from the boys, loved hearing from you guys, and honestly, I could just yap about this like 24/7. But no, that's all we have for you all today. If you want us to continue this relationship series, just let the Instagram know, Miss Charlotte Laidlaw on the other end. Yeah, that's all we have time for today. Stay tuned to SYD Life. There's plenty more of topics in life that people want to hear about. So make your thoughts known and you'll hear about it in the coming episodes. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
This podcast is produced by C3 SYD Church. We exist to know Jesus, find community, and discover purpose. For information, head to c3syd.church, and for more content, go to @sydlife.podcast. Help us reach more people in Sydney by sharing this episode with a friend. See you next time.